Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Gold Coast Tweed District Media Team. We're going to try and get some information out there this morning to everybody out there in bowling world about the facts of what's going on within our great game. And no one better to talk to this morning than the CEO of Bowls Queensland, Brett Wilkie. G'day, Brett. How's things, mate?
Good, thanks, Brian. Good to catch up with you today.
Yes, as you can see, we're social distancing. We're doing everything which we're supposed to do. And Brett, what's happening out there in bowling world, mate? Let's start clearing up a few of the myths that's going on around at the moment regarding playing wise. Like, all the clubs seem to be doing the right thing at the moment. Their doors are closed. I know it's very hard for everybody at the moment. We miss this great game of ours. But mate, can you just clear up a few myths at the moment on what's being spread around out there for us, please?
I think there's a little bit of confusion around at the moment in regard to what clubs can do. Bowls Queensland have put out that they don't condone roll-ups at this point in time, just advising clubs that they must be aware of their responsibility in whatever they do. But at the end of the day, clubs are autonomous and they can choose what they can and can't do. But Bowls Queensland, along with Bowls Australia and pretty much all the other states, are all in the same, roughly the same opinion that they sort of recommend not to be on the greens bowling at this point in time until all the restrictions are lifted. So we can just advise clubs on mainly their responsibilities and just in case anything goes wrong. So that's what we're concerned. If something goes wrong, who'll be what will happen to the clubs, whether there's fines or anything. If things get out of hand, I know a lot of clubs have good intentions, but we just want to make sure they're mindful that if things did go wrong, that there may be ramifications for either their members or their fines for the club. But in worst case scenario, actually people contracting the virus. So that's just things that we're concerned about.
Something I think, Brett, there's very much so. Like, we're at the moment where the numbers are coming down, things are looking positive at the moment. So I think it's a great initiative to say let's do the right thing. I know Queensland Health, which we look at basically every morning, as well as the Australian Health Authority, and they're advising people 70 years and older to stay at home. And I think if we keep this up, we're heading in the right direction at the moment, Brett. And hopefully we can get back to our great game that we love so much faster if we do the right thing at the moment. And all we've got to do is stay home and sit on the couch, and we're saving the world, mate. So.
Yeah, and I know they include over 60s with certain medical conditions and things like that. There's other advice, regarding not leaving your suburb to exercise and things like that. I know different areas are cracking down on those sort of things. So I think it's evolving every day. So like you say, it's just a matter of keeping up to date with the government recommendations, Queensland Health, and see what they're recommending each day. Well,
I think it's said if everybody keeps in touch with their health authority and let's do the right thing and let's try and get it down so we can get back on the greens as fast as we possibly can. I know there's a lot of greenkeepers out there, like myself, that are still working tirelessly trying to get great surfaces for when we all come back to our game that we all love so much. So, the clubs are still working. And there's other ways too, though, Brett. Even at the moment, we're in isolation. We can't go to the club and we can't have a roll up at the moment. We can't enjoy a beer, but there's still ways you can support your club, and maybe you can touch on that one too, Brett.
Yeah, well, at the moment I know a lot of clubs are doing renovations and things like that, whether it's inside or outside. I was talking to Brian Baldwin from Musgrave Hill yesterday, and they're pushing ahead with their renovations. I know Cooperoo Bowls Club got a grant recently to upgrade their toilet block, so it's a great time for them to conduct these renovations within the club, not having to worry about patrons in and around what they're doing all the time. So, and whether it's inside the club, just updating maintenance or painting or little odd jobs that can be done, and even outside the club, like you say, on greens, I know a lot of clubs are fixing up things like ditch rubber and stuff like that. So you might be able to enlighten us, Brian, on what, as a greenkeeper, what clubs should be doing as a minimum to keep their greens.
Well, I think it's not so much the minimum. It depends on how many greens you got, Brett. And like at the moment too, there's still plenty of insects moving around. There's a fair bit of cutworm around at the moment, as most people will realise in their backyards. You can see your grass actually starting to disappear slightly, where the cutworm's having a nice little feed. There's still mealybug moving around, so with the humidity, and particularly the last few months that we've had a bit of rain, and the humidity's really made things a little bit worse for this time of the year than normal. But I think one of the biggest things that probably is a blessing in disguise for a lot of greenkeepers, Brett, because it was so hard last October, November, December, where it was so hot without any rain. So now we're actually playing catch up by double cutting our greens and grooming them and actually getting them into top shape, or the best we can, for when our bowlers come back to their various clubs and they've got enjoyment on some great greens to play on. But also too, Brett, is I'd like to just recommend to our members is to ring your club, or maybe ring someone in, because apparently a lot of them these day and age are still doing takeaway meals, and they're selling alcohol as a takeaway business. So statewide, I'm not just talking Gold Coast here, I'm talking all over Queensland. Try and support your club the best you can, and I think you'd agree with that, mate?
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity for clubs to still pass on things to members, selling the different things that they're able to, depending on what they have available. So I know a lot of clubs, if they didn't have that already, have made moves to get the right approvals from OLGR and that sort of thing to conduct those services. So it's great to support your local club if they've got them on offer.
Yeah, no, this is when the clubs really need as much support as they can get from their members, and I know a lot of people out there are doing the right thing and ringing up their clubs and making contact with various directors to see how they can still help the club, which is wonderful to see. A time of adversity like this is that people have to pull together and really keep things on the move for the positive, and there will be a lot of positives come out of this downturn, I'm sure of that. Something that a lot of bowlers haven't experienced, Brett, is not been able to go to their club, for argument's sake. But all I can say is stay strong, and like we're going to come out of it, and we keep doing what we're doing at the moment, which is staying away at the moment and trying to get the numbers down. Hopefully we'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I know we had a lot of inquiries from clubs asking whether they were actually allowed to go to the club to do anything on the greens or inside. So it's good to get that out to people, that they know that they can go and perform duties on their greens, or as long as they're practicing the social distancing rules and that sort of thing. I know Clubs Queensland put out that they recommended if there was volunteers there helping on and around the greens, that they probably should only have a maximum of 2 in the outside practicing social distancing. So that was Clubs Queensland recommendation. And also volunteers being able to go into the club is fine if they're doing administration work and things like that to help maintain the club and keep it ready for when we open up again, all the clubs. So hopefully not too far away.
Well, I hope you're right on that one too, Brett, and it's very good common sense to use those guidelines and put them into practice. And I know there's still a lot of things that can be done around clubs at this stage, Brett, as far as you said before, a couple of clubs have been able to utilise grants to do the renovations and various things, which is a wonderful time to do it. Unfortunately, I've been asked by quite a few people, as far as bowling greens are concerned, can you do your renovations now? Well, it wouldn't be advisable going into winter, and most of the clubs, of course, have already completed their renovation process and getting their greens, their surfaces ready for winter. So just for the clubs out there that have a lot of volunteers, no, it's, even though there's no one playing on your greens at the moment, not really a good time to take a top off a green, as one club just asked me just recently. Going into winter months, it's not very advisable at this stage. So it's a matter of just doing that when it gets a little bit warmer. But of course, as Brett said, there's plenty of jobs you can do around there to help your club. But most importantly is stay safe and get ready for when we can go back to our great game. So what else do you have on offer with advice for clubs, Brett? I know there's a lot of various grants and that out there. Maybe we can help out a few people throughout this great state of ours on letting them know on what's available.
Yeah, I think firstly, when you're touching on clubs keeping in contact with each other, I think it's great if the bowlers keep in contact, even though they're not at the club, keep in contact via phone or on social media or through, there's a lot of conferencing going on at the moment with things like Zoom and that sort of thing, video conference calls where committees can keep in touch and things like that. I know our Bowls Queensland staff and some of our committees are using Zoom, and it's been a great resource. And also through the RBMs, I've been meeting with the RBMs via Zoom, and also Bowls Australia have go-to meetings that we have with different states and things like that. So if people have access to that sort of technology, it's a great option to stay in touch with each other while they are being isolated at home. And I think it's very important that we keep interacting as much as we can.
Ever so true, Brett. And one thing you have to remember out there too, out to all the bowlers and that, there's a lot of spouses out there who have lost a partner, and they used to use the bowling club as their form of social contact on a weekly basis. So, as you said, most important to stay in contact with these people and just let them know that we're thinking about them, and when the time's right, we'll get back there and enjoy this great game of ours and have a game of bowls with them and have a conversation with them, because I know I've had a few phone calls from a few people that are a bit down at the moment. So, you know, if you can go around and maybe pick up some food for them and drop off and drop it off at their door and maybe talk to them from a distance, try and do it, and let's help as many of our comrades as we possibly can, because a lot of people out there doing it a bit tough. But for the clubs out there, Brett, that aren't 100% sure, there's a lot of grants out there, apparently from the government, state and federal, that you may know might be able to help a few clubs out.
Yeah, there's both state and federal, as you say, have offered different packages that are available, whether it's stimuluses or grants or things like that. So we've put, thanks to Bowls Australia, put out a list of different things that are available, and that's changing all the time. So if you go onto the Bowls Queensland or Bowls Australia website, they have that information on what is available. And I think it's also a case of monitoring the state and federal government's websites and media releases that are coming out all the time to stay up to date, and also making sure you act upon it quickly. So I know with the JobKeeper registrations are open, and a lot of businesses are registering for that, which is great for staff and things like that. But I know Queensland Sport and Rec have done a study already with all the state sporting organisations, asked them all to do a survey with a questionnaire to get feedback on what's the impact of all the different sports. And I know last week and this week they've been collating all that information to discuss what their next plan of attack's going to be through the Sport and Rec Department, through the Queensland Government, to see what assistance they can give to sporting organisations and clubs throughout the state. So that is work in progress, and I look forward to hearing what they come out with in the near future. I know all the other, I'm not sure what's going to happen with all the other sort of grants that have been muted for the future. They may change and get packaged into sort of stimuluses for different clubs and that sort of thing. So it's just a matter of watching this space and see what comes out in the coming weeks.
Yes, some good advice there, Brett, for clubs, and for the ones that aren't too sure, like, I mean, every club basically has a auditor or an accountant, and in this time of crisis and that, would be pretty much advisable that they go to their accountant to get the up-to-date, as you said. I know there's a package going through, I think, Parliament tomorrow federally, and they're still working on it today. So there's a lot of clubs out there, Brett, that don't have professional help. So my advice, and I think yours would be also too, is to seek some professional advice and utilise what's available to keep our clubs going and keep the facilities open for their public. I realise too, Brett, and know that you've had a lot of phone calls from a lot of clubs in not so much the metropolitan area, but in the country areas, and their advice would no doubt be the same, to make sure that they get some legal advice to see what's available to them.
Yeah, that's right, and also one thing we haven't touched on is the local councils as well, so contacting them to see what's available through them in regard to assistance with rates and water and those sort of things locally. I know Sport and Rec Queensland have spoken to all the councils in regard to that as well, so there is sort of options there available if you make contact to see what's available in your local area. But yeah, we're obviously looking at, I've spoken to the Minister for Sport in regards to our industry and some of the concerns we have, which he took on board, which was great, and that's all part of the new review they're doing at the moment. And also, Yeah, it's just not. We've had a lot of inquiries from, we've talked a lot about people or clubs that have staff and things like that, but we also have a lot of clubs with just volunteer base and with no staff, so we want to make sure that they're being looked after as well.
No, it's very good advice there, Brett, that's for sure. Brett, just before we conclude, mate, there's been a lot of events that have been cancelled on that, and maybe we could let everybody know a more up-to-date schedule of what we have at the moment.
Yeah, the Board of Bowls Queensland has decided to postpone the district sides from this year till next year, and as many districts have already paid for or put deposits down for accommodation and that sort of thing in the Gateway district area, so we've decided to allocate it back to the Gateway district again next year, so a lot of those districts can utilise that money that they've already put down, and that's been the feedback we've had to, they'd like it back in those areas again in the Gateway district, so that one's definitely been postponed till next year. The state championships, we're still waiting to see what Bowls Australia decide in regard to the Australian championships that are scheduled to be held at Broadbeach in October. They're looking at making a decision with that very soon, so we'll follow their advice and see what they're doing with the Australian championships, and then the Bowls Queensland board will make a decision in regard to our state championships, whether it goes ahead in 2020. So I know the World Championships has been postponed. It was meant to be held on the Gold Coast at the end of May, June. So it's been postponed to the same time next year, and it will be held on the Gold Coast again next year in 2021, similar to the Tokyo Olympics was postponed 12 months to nearly exactly the same date. So the fortunate thing with the World Championships is it's held every 4 years, so they've got the luxury of being able to put it back a year and still hold the event, which is great. And the other events that Bowls Queensland have been affected, we had Hong Kong originally coming out to have a training run out on the Gold Coast that we were supplying a team to play against them. That was being cancelled. Our Anzac test that we have a President's 12 play against the Australian Defence Force that's held usually in April every year. That's been postponed till hopefully later in the year, so that'll be on a date to be advised. And the next sort of lot, the Australian Open's been cancelled for 2020, so that'll be back on the Gold Coast in 2021. Other events, the Australian Indoor Singles has been cancelled. A lot of states hadn't even started their qualifying for that yet, so our qualifying has been cancelled for that, along with the main event of the Australian Open, which was scheduled for August at Tweed Heads. And then the next events that sort of are under consideration for Bowls Queensland, Champion to Champion events. They're sort of being looked at the moment, and so we still have a lot of clubs that are still trying to finalise their club championships, and then districts to play Champion to Champions and things like that. So that's one thing that's on the drawing board at the moment, what we do with that, and a decision will be made in the future in regards to that, and state pennants. Pennants not far away either, so these are other events that are ongoing that'll be considered as we get closer.
Yeah, I know on the Gold Coast, Brett, we're monitoring on basically a weekly basis with the directors of the association as well as the match committee of the Gold Coast, and I think it'd be very, very hard at the moment, even if we got back to bowls immediately, to even run the pennant competition at the moment, because a lot of clubs haven't got their lists up there yet, and it depends on when people are allowed back into their clubs and that. So it's something I think that's got to have to be monitored. So I wouldn't be rushing out there getting ready for the pennant season at this stage. It may be a bit of a modified season depending on when we get back, but it's something I think that we just got to address when the time comes. It's exactly what you said, Brett, same as champion events. By looks of things, it's definitely won't be sticking to the timetable that's been put out in the agenda, so it's something we probably have to look at down the track when we get back on the green, mate. Yeah,
the other one is the state district mixed pairs. I know the Gold Coast have finished your event, but I know a lot of other districts are either in the middle of it or haven't even started yet, so that's another event to consider, whether it gets pushed back or what we do with that in the future as well.
I'm sure it'll all eventuate when we get back on the green, Brett, but for everybody, don't rush into it. I said it'll be monitored as we get through, and hopefully we get back to it as soon as we possibly can. But just keep doing the right thing, distance yourself, and we keep doing the right thing. We're going to be back sooner rather than later. And as I said to you previously, this broadcast is brought to you by the Gold Coast Tweed District Media Team, and a big thank you to Robbie Allen for the use of his house this morning and setting everything up for us. And Brett, we hope to do something very similar to this on a weekly basis to get as much advice out to a bowling fraternity as we possibly can. So hopefully clubs are a little bit better informed. So mate, with that I think we'll end it here today. Anything else you'd just like to tell the bowlers out there?
I think it's been good for a first one, but I look forward to joining you again and keeping people up to date as much as we can. I know, like we said earlier, it's evolving all the time, and we just all need to stay positive and look forward to and think of ideas of what we can do to help when we do get back on the greens, little things we can improve. I think this is a good brainstorming time to think of, what can we do better when we get up and get running again and that sort of thing. What can help the clubs, but most of all, people getting back and supporting their local clubs.
I couldn't agree more on that, Brett. And as I said, it's most important is that you've got to think about not what the club can do for you, but what you can do for your club. And it's this time in crisis when clubs are going to need our help. And mate, just a big thank you for you and your time this morning. And on behalf of the Gold Coast Tweed District Media Team, ably led by Robbie Allen, as I've always said, enjoy your bowls and support your club. I know we can't enjoy it at the moment, but support your club. They really do need our help. So let's get out there and let's get ready for clean the club up and get ready for when we can go back there. All the best, everybody, and we'll bring you another one next Tuesday, same time. Thank you very much.